Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emma Fryer, and I am the Chief Strategy Officer at the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona. We are so glad that you have joined us today as our state legislators have officially kicked off the 2022 session. WFSA has been advocating for women and girls at the Arizona State Capitol since 2014, though you might know us by our former name, the Women's Foundation of Southern Arizona. This past October, WFSA expanded from a Southern Arizona philanthropic foundation to a statewide foundation in order to create an Arizona where women and girls of all identities can thrive. At WFSA, we innovate to create social, political, and economic change that achieves equity for women and girls. Our expansion not only allows us to build partnerships across the state for our philanthropy and grant making, but it also allows us to build statewide awareness and support for our advocacy efforts. WFSA's legislative priorities and advocacy are designed to create system changes that support the economic and social sustainability and growth for women and girls throughout the state. And now I'm going to hand it over to Gauri Gladish, WFSA's Director of Research and Advocacy, to give a brief background on our legislative work and to introduce our partners at Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs. Over to you, Gauri.
Thanks, Emma. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. Emma, I appreciate that great introduction to the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona. As Emma mentioned, WFSA's advocacy has always had statewide implications in that we pursue legislative policies that are not limited to the geographic borders of Southern Arizona. For example, we successfully amended legislation to include education as part of the work requirement for the state's TANF program. We also ran a House bill, HB 2016, which was sponsored by Representative Udall, which was signed into law in 2021. This was a big win, which can benefit 400,000 families across the state. The state will allow DES childcare recipients to maintain their benefits while enrolling in full-time education to expand their career opportunities. We have had an amazing group of Southern Arizona advocates working to advance legislation like HB 2016. Now, with WFSA's statewide expansion, we are powering up the momentum by expanding our advocacy network to include champions from all 15 counties. Imagine what we'll be able to accomplish with a far-reaching and regionally diverse group of advocates who can share information about WFSA's priorities within their individual networks. In 2022, WFSA is embarking on our most ambitious legislative agenda yet to ensure that women and girls in Arizona have all the economic and social supports they need to be self-sufficient, achieve economic independence, and to thrive. This legislative session, we'll be running 2 bills and looking for opportunities to amend bills for a more equitable Arizona. Our first bill will expand the Healthy Families Arizona program to ensure moms and parents have the social supports from the beginning of their pregnancies through their child's first early years. Our second bill will seek to end gender-based state taxes on feminine hygiene products, diapers, and formula. In Arizona, menstrual products are deemed non-essential goods and taxed as a luxury. But menstruating people know these products are necessary for economic and social aspects of life. In addition to running our bills, we are excited to support legislation that benefits women and their families. A big priority for WFSA is expanding health access for women and their children, specifically kids care and 12-month Medicaid coverage for postpartum women. We are excited about this agenda, and we are very excited to have you join us to create a more equitable Arizona for women and girls throughout our state. We will be sharing updates and insights and so much more over our advocacy network as the session progresses, so be sure to sign up for our network emails, and I'll give you a little more information about that in a bit. I'd now like to pass it over to Stuart Goodman and Emily Raymond from Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs. The Goodman Schwartz team has been instrumental in taking a deep dive into WFSA's priorities and focus, helping to make connections to our research, and also looking at policy gaps that we can address. They have established relationships at the Capitol to help connect WFSA to the right legislators who will support our priorities. And they have connections to other community coalitions and work groups that align with our efforts. I'll turn it over to Stuart with Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs for introductions and to talk a little more about this legislative session.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second regular session of the 55th Arizona Legislature, excuse me. We are happy to be here on your behalf. Myself, Brandy Patrone, my senior associate, and Emily Raymond, our associate as well in government affairs, working on issues that Gory mentioned a few moments ago. Broadly, I want to take a few moments to talk about the legislative landscape for what we expect in 2022. For starters, while the legislature remains a Republican legislature with the narrow majorities of 31-29 in the House and 16-14 in the Senate, the personalities have changed. As a result of resignations, a criminal indictment, and one unfortunate death, you now have 11 new legislators comprising the 90 overall for this upcoming this current legislative session. As a result of all of that, the personalities are different, the characteristics are different, and that'll make legislative leadership having more challenges in managing their caucuses, both Republicans and Democrats alike, as they try to navigate through the challenging issues that they face. Among those issues, we expect to see significant issues regarding COVID-19 protocols, vaccine mandates, those sort of issues, which certainly will dominate the political landscape. We expect to see a large conversation on education funding, as well as voter integrity issues. To make matters a little more complicated, this is a redistricting year, which means you have new district boundaries that have just been released. As a result, you have members that'll be representing their current district while they prepare for their new district in the 22 election cycle. This has caused a number of issues as you have incumbents now facing off against future incumbents as they head into, again, unfamiliar districts with unfamiliar opponents. That will make floor battles much more challenging as members jockey around. Also, it's important to know that the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, are both retiring at the end of this year, which means you're going to have leadership battles, and members will use this session to demonstrate their leadership skills for the upcoming session in 2023. So again, major implications on how the system operates. You also have a host of members that are running for statewide office, running for congressional offices, that are remaining in the legislature, and that will certainly challenge all temperament as they try to better themselves for those upcoming statewide congressional elections. Now I'm going to pass it off to Emily Raymond. Emily's going to talk about the legislative timeline, the timeframes, as well as the infamous RTS system. Emily, it's all yours.
Thank you, Stuart. Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Emily Raymond, and I'm an associate here at Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs and have the pleasure of representing the Women's Foundation for the state of Arizona down at the state capitol this session. So as mentioned, today is the very first day of legislative session. It's very exciting. Today, like all first days of legislative session, the governor is going to be giving his State of the State address, and you will be able to watch that too this afternoon on the governor's website at azgovernor.gov, or you can find the event likely on his social media accounts or on local news outlets. The governor also has to present his budget by this Friday. The governor is required to present this budget to the state legislature, and this will be his recommendations as to where we should go with the state's budget. It's largely a document that's going to use to start negotiations between the governor and the Republican majority as we progress through the next few months of session. I'd like to take a couple moments to share with everybody a timeline that they can expect to see this upcoming session. First, the House has a 7-bill limit that starts this Thursday, the 13th. Because there are twice as many members in the Arizona House of Representatives as there are in the Senate, the representatives are limited in how many bills that they can introduce. Before this Thursday, they can introduce as many as they would like, but come this Thursday at 5 p.m., after that, they can only introduce 7 additional bills. They have the opportunity to introduce those 7 additional bills until February 7th. The Senate, on the other hand, can introduce as many bills as they would like until their introduction on January 31st. Once those bills are all introduced, they're going to be heard in committees. You can hear bills in the originating chamber, so House bills in House committees and Senate bills in Senate committees, until February 18th. At that time, Senate bills will go to the House and House bills will come to the Senate, and they have an additional 4 weeks to be heard in the opposite chamber. The last day to hear bills in the opposite chamber is March 25th. After that, we'll start getting into the budget process. On April 19th, it'll mark the 100th day of session, which ideally is when we'll start to wrapping up that budget. But for those of you who have been around the legislature, you know that's not always the case, and likely it will extend a bit longer. So the end of session is very much largely dependent on how budget negotiations are going with the Republican majority, and can extend well past that 100th day mark. Another item that I'd like to touch base with everybody on is the request to speak system, known as RTS. The RTS system is one of the best ways to communicate your position on legislation at the state legislature. While it stands for RTS stands for request to speak, you do not have to speak. You can sign in for or against when a bill is in committee from wherever you are in the state. The system collects public input from people all over to share with the legislators about how their constituents feel. This is an extremely important tool in our advocacy efforts with the Women's Foundation for the State of Arizona. And having folks signed up in advance for this system is extremely helpful when we need to mobilize our efforts. The Women's Foundation is going to share an e-blast with instructions on RTS, and there's also a link to the survey for our team, Goodman Schwartz, to create that for you. You can find that link in that e-blast, or you can scan the QR code on your screen now for a survey on what RTS is and how you can sign up. Once you sign up, our team will go down to the Capitol for you, create you an account, and send it to you. So wherever you are in the state, you can participate as well. We look forward to working with you this session and mobilizing our advocacy team. And I'm going to pass it back to you, Gauri.
Thanks, Emily and Stuart, and thanks so much for that great information and insight. We appreciate both of you being with us today and for your continued partnership with WFSA. And we hope everyone watching signs up for the Request to Speak system. WFSA is embarking on our most ambitious legislative agenda, and we can't do it without you, our advocate. Your voice is strong, and together we can be a movement. So let's create an Arizona where women and girls of all identities have the economic and social supports they need to be self-sufficient, achieve economic independence, and thrive in their community. We invite you to take action now and join the Women's Equity Network. If you've already been advocating with WFSA, you are familiar with the Women's Issues Network Arizona. We have revamped it and renamed it to the Women's Equity Network, or WE Network. Periodic WE Network emails will provide updates on issues impacting women and girls, the legislative session, WFSA and supporting bills, and opportunities to support and participate in advocacy. Together, we can learn, advocate, and create system change that benefits women in Arizona. You can sign up now at womengiving.org. We'll be sending an email soon with the follow-up information from today's event, and you'll be the first to know when we launch our advocacy toolkit, so you won't want to miss signing up for that email. Lastly, I'd like to mention a few event dates coming up during the first quarter of the year. First, we'll be hosting a legislative session update in early to mid-February as part of our WFSA statewide expansion listening tour. During the virtual event, we will give an update on WFSA-run bills and bills we're watching. Secondly, on March 16th, WFSA will be hosting a Women's Advocacy Day at the Capitol on the Arizona State Capitol lawn. Advocates from around the state are invited to attend and show their support for our bills and advocate on behalf of women and girls. These two events are open to the public, and we hope you'll be able to attend. So with that, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to advocating with you during the legislative session to create a more equitable Arizona for women and girls of all identities. Don't forget to visit womengiving.org to sign up for our We Network and be the first to hear of advocacy news and updates from WFSA. Thanks again. Now let's get to work.